He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Welcome to the very first episode of RNZ's new podcast, No Stupid Questions with Susan Edmunds. As you may have guessed, I'm Susan Edmunds and I'm RNZ's money correspondent. I've been writing about personal finance issues for about 15 years, but I don't come from a finance or business background. I sort of stumbled into it and have wombled my way through ever since. And often when I'm chatting to CEOs or economists or generally people I used to find a bit intimidating, I'd say, sorry, this is probably a stupid question. But actually I realised that there are in fact no stupid questions. See what I did there? Because either they'd give me some information that was really useful to me or the audience for my stories, or someone would later tell me that they were so glad I asked and was able to explain that particular thing because they'd been wanting to know and they hadn't known how or who to ask. So here we are, ready to get the answers to all your stupid, not stupid questions. We want you to send them to us at questions@rnz.co.nz. You can email them, or even better, you can send them as a voice note. You can ask any money question you can think of. We can chat about KiwiSaver, savings, investing, the share market. Now, this is random. My 11-year-old, for the first time ever, said to me the other day, did you know the S&P's going well? I think he's got some new friends at school, but it was very disconcerting. But it was like, this is my time to shine. Anyway, you can also ask about earning money, spending it. And I'm joined in my epic quest to find you money answers by Justin Gregory.
Hey, yeah, but perhaps your 11-year-old should be doing my job. But anyway, let's go for it.
What's our very first question in our very first episode?
It comes from Jo in Christchurch. She asks something that is probably, top of mind for lots of us when we think about money. Where can I get more of it?
Yes, I sometimes think people are a bit, tongue-in-cheek when they ask me this question, but there are some ways to answer it. It's a big question though, so I'll have a crack at it now and then I'll probably keep coming back to it in future episodes. So basically, to have more money, you either have to earn more of it or spend less of it. Unfortunately, there's not really any other way around it. I suppose you could win it. That's one I hadn't thought of, but probably can't get into that. But you can make more by taking on a side hustle, maybe using the skills you have in your main job or getting into something different, or you try to get more money out of your current job. It's probably a bit of a tricky environment to be asking for a huge raise at the moment, but we might be able to get into some tips to do that in a future episode. It generally comes down to making a case and proving to your boss why you're worth it, as L'Oreal would say. You could sell stuff. We often get updates from places like Trade Me about all the stuff people are sitting on in their houses that they might be able to sell. Although I do think there's a bit of a knack to getting a good price for it, and that's probably a future episode too, because every time I try to sell something, I get about $1.50 for it, but my husband manages to get, hundreds, so there's some magic going on there. And you can also check whether you're getting all the income support you're entitled to. That's particularly the case for families who might qualify for working for families and that sort of thing.
So that's the money coming inside of the discussion. What about the money going outside, the spending side?
Yeah, I think people have got pretty good at cutting their spending in recent times. The latest retail data made it look like we're getting some pretty good discounts, actually. But there are a few ways to help your spending. A good one is to do a budget. This is, deeply boring, but getting an idea of where your money is going can be a helpful way to save it. It's so easy to fritter away your money without really thinking about it. Even just going through your bank statements to see where you're spending money can be helpful, but looking at what you've got coming in, what has to be spent on the essentials each month, and what you have discretion over, then identifying things that you can cut or reduce can potentially free up more money than you think. But I'm sorry, there are no magic more money solutions that I can think of anyway.
That's disappointing, but we'll carry on. Okay, our second question comes from Anna in Whangarei. There's been a bit in the news lately about GDP, with the figures for the June quarter coming out this week, isn't it? It's like the 17th. She wants to know what GDP actually is and why it matters.
So to answer this one, I talked to Nick Brunston, who's principal economist at Infometrics.
So GDP is the value of the flows in our economy, of what we produce in a given year or a given quarter. So it's the monetary value of what we've made, of what we've done. When I'm thinking at a local level, I like to think of what people are paid, so sort of wages and salaries, and the profits of businesses. That's a pretty good approximation, and it's probably the pretty tangible way to think about it.
Yeah, okay. And so for the average person, when they see the numbers come out, why should they care? Should they care?
I think they should. I think I mean, GDP is certainly not perfect, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but GDP does value things in a way that I think people would expect it to. GDP recognises that digging coal out of the ground is a more valuable activity than cleaning a motel or something like that. So I think there's the sort of the value in it, and here, I think people would broadly agree with, and I think it broadly represents what we think as a society is more valuable or is less valuable. It's just that you get a challenge when there's things that are simply not in the equation at all, like the quality of the environment or caring for children at home rather than in a daycare, and those sorts of subtleties that mean that it's very good at what it does measure, I think, and I think it broadly does what we would expect it to. It just doesn't measure other things, and GDP does get held up perhaps a little bit too high and a little bit too sort of singularly for what it is.
Okay, so it's not everything, but it's a good measure of what it's measuring.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, all right. And so when it shrinks, that means that our economy's got smaller, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so when we start, if we're in a recession and the economy shrunk by 0.1% decline in a quarter, that represents some businesses completely shutting down. So sort of going from 100% to 0%, and then also a whole bunch of businesses that have just gone from 100% to 99% or something like that. And so it does reflect across our whole society what's been going on, whether it's wholesale shutdowns or whether it's just everyone's been doing just a little bit less.
Okay, so there's just less money going around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, for me, I'm probably a bit different to the bank economists in that I'm more thinking regionally. But if anything, I think it's actually non-economists that probably push and hold GDP in perhaps too high esteem. I think we have a lot of people come to us that want to know the GDP of this or that, or what's the impact of this. And in many cases, I think more tangible measures like employment, the number of jobs that something is going to create, tells the story very well and in a much more relatable way to people. So
That's
it's not
fair.
necessarily a case of economists pushing GDP where it's not well warranted. It kind of goes the other way as well. And it just reflects that we all want a KPI. Christopher Luxon wants a KPI, and it's convenient to have one KPI that kind of ostensibly captures everything. It's still not always the right tool.
Yeah, okay, all right. So it should maybe just be part of the overall picture when we try and work out what's going on.
Absolutely, and if you took it in tandem with other measures like the quality of environment and the distribution of resources within our economy, you'd have a great suite of measures. It's just that we put a bit more effort into measuring GDP, and it's just easy to have one.
It's when we get 2 quarters of GDP declining that we start talking about a technical recession, which always gets everyone very excited, or maybe everyone is a bit of a stretch, but people I talk to get quite excited. But we'd be hoping that doesn't happen this time because this has been a really persistent downturn and I think everyone is thoroughly sick of it.
Is there any real difference between a technical recession and an actual real recession?
Well, in New Zealand, we don't have a board of people who say that we are in a recession like I think they have in the United States. So it's just the data showing that this is a recession. But I think we can also talk generally about a downturn, a recession that households feel. Nick mentioned that the GDP doesn't always tell the full picture, and I think there is that general household experience that matters too.
How it feels, yep.
That's right.
Our next question comes from Merlin.
Hi, Susan. Merlin here. I was at Domino's last night for a quick, no-thinking Friday tea. 3 pizzas ordered and cooked fresh. Bliss. However, what wasn't so blissful was looking at the receipt this morning as I put the boxes in the recycling. The receipt for 3 pizzas was $46. 1 budget, 1 normal, and 1 gourmet. That's a lot more than our usual fish and chip supper when we do fork out for a takeaway. So I looked at it a bit harder, and when I saw it, 3 pizzas, $40, and tax at $6. The receipt said budget pizza $6, normal $16, and gourmet $18, which I'm sure is what the menu on the counter said. But there was no mention of them being GST exclusive. Their pamphlet menu has no mention of prices whatsoever, and neither does the website until you start ordering. So, for a business like Domino's, where it deals mainly with the end user, are they allowed to advertise GST exclusive prices? Shouldn't the price you see be the price you pay? Regards, Merlin.
I love this question because it is so random. I went to Domino's and asked them what's going on. They say that although GST is broken out on the receipt, it's included in the display price of the pizzas on the menu or website or whatever you're looking at. We couldn't quite get to the bottom of this completely because Merlin doesn't still have his receipt. He must have been a bit too good with the recycling. But I went to look at the order confirmation emails from one of my many Domino's orders, and it does look as though the price I paid lines up with the advertised price. But I would note the surcharges. So you take a deal. We had 2 pizzas and 2 sides for $20.99. But then paid a surcharge of $3.50 per pizza because my kids like the barbecue meat lovers and that's more expensive for some reason. And then a surcharge of $1.80 because my husband always wants chicken for the side and that's more expensive. So the final bill was just under $30. Maybe that's what happened to Merlin too, perhaps.
It all felt a bit American, this question comes in. You know, you go into a bar and you buy a drink and the price is such and such and suddenly you're paying that much more because there's tax on top. But anyway, pizza and GDP.
Generally in New Zealand, unless you're buying supplies as a business, the price that you quoted would have GST and all taxes included.
Cool. And that takes us to our next point of order, and one we're going to come back to again and again and again in the series, I would imagine. KiwiSaver.
Yes, it's one of my favourite topics. Please don't judge me too harshly for that nerdiness.
Nerdiness isn't the question here, though. Someone's wondering whether it's a scam. In fact, you looked into whether KiwiSaver was a scam or not. Why did you do that?
I did. I quite often get emails and messages from people who have a similar sentiment. But I had a question in from someone who had a bad experience trying to make a withdrawal on hardship grounds. So this person had tried quite a long time ago now, actually, to get help for her partner's funeral, but she was turned down.
It's become quite common to get money out of KiwiSaver, right? And it's mostly for hardship reasons.
Yeah, well, you can get money out of KiwiSaver early for a first home or for hardship reasons. And the first home is still, more people are doing that, but there are a growing number of people getting money out for hardship reasons. The number of withdrawals for that reason was up 50.8% in the year to June, or 44,099 withdrawals, with a total of just over $400 million withdrawn, which was also up almost $180 million from the previous year. So it's pretty significant. I think in this case, this person was turned down because there's a requirement that you have to have no other options available to you. So if you're managing, I think she said she took a loan to pay the funeral, even though the loan has hung around for many, many years. But if you have that option, they can turn you down. And I get the feeling they used to be harder on this than is now the case. I also spoke to someone recently who runs a charity that helps people with debt. And she says she thinks supervisors, they're the ones who have to approve the withdrawal, are being too easy on some people and not pushing them to make sure they haven't tried all their other options. I asked the FMA about that though. They just shot me down and said, no, they have to stick to the rules. So that is just my own reckons at the moment, but that's certainly a little sentiment there.
And who are the FMA that they shot you down?
Oh, sorry. The FMA is the Financial Markets Authority. So they're the ones who make sure that everyone is doing what they're meant to do.
Right, good-o. Now, obviously, the person who got in touch with you is feeling pretty burnt about this, but scam is a big word, possibly too harsh a word for what we're talking about here.
Yes, I think it's much too harsh a word. This person was left with the feeling that she didn't want anything to do with it anymore because it didn't do what she thought it would, I suppose. I did try to say when I responded to this question in my column that I really hope that she rethinks the idea that it's a scam, because I hear it often from people who are worried that the government will somehow have access to their money and they'll, take money out at whim, and that it's just some ruse to get people to put money in there that the government will use for nefarious purposes. But it isn't true. There are lots of rules around this scheme that mean the government, or actually anyone, they just can't take your money. It is held for you in trust. I think the biggest problem with this scheme is that it's kind of inextricably linked with politics because of that tie-in with retirement policies, and we all have a healthy distrust of politicians. So that has the potential to undermine people's faith in it, even undeservedly. And it doesn't help at all when there's lots of little changes being made or proposed. I reckon we'd be better to have a big reset, get it on the right track, agreement from everyone, and then leave it alone. So that's my rant.
You feeling better now, Susan? Got that off your chest?
A little, but I'm sure we'll keep coming back to KiwiSaver many times over the course of this podcast. So that brings us to the end of our very first episode. Now we have a question for you.
Do you think the amount of cash that's in circulation is increasing or decreasing? And we're talking about money out in the world, not the money in your back pocket. Because as we've outlined at the start of this, most people feel that the money in their back pocket is decreasing.
So we've chatted about this, so Justin knows the answer, but it's always interesting to get people's perspectives. Send your answers to questions@rnz.co.nz. And remember, we want all your questions, whether you want to talk about pizzas some more, or investing, or something entirely different, we're just here for them. Thank you, Justin, for joining me.
No problem, and really enjoyed it.
No Stupid Questions with Susan Edmunds was written and presented by Susan Edmunds. Justin Gregory is the producer. The engineer is Phil Benge. Thanks to Joe, Anna and Merlin, that's me, for the questions, and Nick Brunston for his answers. Follow and listen to No Stupid Questions with Susan Edmunds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcast app so you don't miss an episode.
Bye for now.